Well done. Let's share the screen. Okay, let's get over here. Very good. Welcome. Hope everybody has had a good week after Passover and you piled on the muffins and the pizza pie. Okay, I saw a kid at the store the other day clutching a box of Fruit Loops like it was oil. The kid finally had her Fruit Loops. Okay, so today we're going to finish up Ethan Shav's analysis of what the word lev means, what the biblical understanding is of the mind, and that's to give us a good footing in what is meant by the mind. So as we study further what other scholars say about how you use your mind, how you control your mind, how your mind works, we'll have some biblical background for that. And we're also going to continue learning about meditation in everyday life, focusing on what Bhante calls breathing coordination. Now, I mentioned that we're finishing up Ethan Shav today. This is to prepare us for the next segment, the next part of the curriculum that Rabbi Kaplan has in Jewish meditation, which is meditation and self-mastery. Meditation and remolding the self. That's what he calls it, remolding the self. And it syncs well with what Maxwell Smart is saying. Maxwell Maltz is saying, sorry about that, those who remember Get Smart. Maxwell Maltz is saying, and what Rabbi Kaplan has said in other area is about how we grow, how we use our mind. So we're going to be using 3 essays in the next segment of our curriculum. Meditation, Remolding the Self, that's the essay by Rabbi Kaplan in Jewish Meditation. We're going to go to the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lozado, in his Mesilat Yesharim, Path of the Just, which is a dynamite essay that covers this topic. We're going to use chapters 2 and 3, and we're going to go over the lengthy explanation that Maxwell Maltz has about your servo mechanism and how your mind works. And that chapter is called How to Awaken the Auto Success Mechanism Within You. With the background we have so far, especially in the biblical understanding of the mind, a lot of things will become clear and will become very interesting. Okay, so yeah, we're going to cover that over the next few classes. So having said that, let's go to Ethan Shav. So we'll stop this. We'll share again. We will go to Ethan there. Okay. So to summarize, Ethan, as a biblical scholar, is putting forth the argument that the Bible, Tanakh, and other commentaries, including Medrash, have presented a very thorough and clear understanding of what the mind is. Just as he uncovered that the Bible presents a very clear understanding of what the soul is, he makes the same kind of presentation on what the Bible says about the mind. And you know what? They're very much linked. So it's very, very interesting. And we're going to now use his 4th and final essay to kind of wrap things up. He does a good job of wrapping things up. Okay, and as he says, it's time to wrap up the Lev entry. And again, his focus is on Lamed Vav, the biblical word for lave, which has been mistranslated as heart, but which really more suitably means mind. And as we've seen in the past, in the prior 3 essays, with his background in both Eastern and Western philosophy, he's able to provide these insights in terms we understand, in terms where we usually use to refer to the mind. He's basically saying, hey, you know what? It's in the Bible too. the Bible can be understood in those terms and the Eastern and Western philosophic terms as well. How do you like that? And it makes sense based on the context in which the word lev is used throughout Tanakh and also in Medrash. Okay, so examples. Ethan says, the ground we already covered should put your mind at rest, or in biblical Hebrew, put you in a good mind, regarding 3 points. The non-figurative lev never meant the anatomical heart. We got that. It's not that organ that's in your chest. The figurative use of lev is first and foremost as the seat of rational thought, awareness, intent, and reflection. It's almost as if he's saying the mind is a place. I think that's a fairly good where to put it. It's a place in which you are acting as an air traffic controller with all the thoughts and emotions and cognitive functions that are taking place. You're in the cockpit. Okay, the seat of rational thought, awareness, intent, and reflection. And his third point, by correcting the mistranslation of lev, replacing the excitable heart with the perceptive mind, the Bible's fundamental teaching about the soul, prophecy, and transformation emerges dazzlingly from the text. Okay, in really simple terms, what I understand him to be saying is that the mind is where the soul, you'll find your soul in your mind. And your soul is filled with all this stuff. Rather than a sentimental faith of emotional passion and meek hearts, we are confronted then with the original doctrine of mind enlightenment, directed toward self-knowledge and the clear perception of the divine. It's in the mind that we perceive the divine. It's from the mind that we perceive God, so to speak. That's his bottom line. And so he's made the point. So then he says, what I wish to stress this week is how dangerous it is to leave the translation of lev as heart, even in those verses where the mental activity described is emotional. Indeed, I want to show how vital it is to love the Lord your God with all your mind. So his point is that he says, it's not that such a big deal that lev is being mistranslated as heart, meaning the anatomical organ. Okay, we got that. But he says the problem becomes more complicated. The problem is that when people say heart, they automatically go from the physical heart to the emotions. And he goes, that's the problem. When people start using the word heart, they start thinking of emotions, and they start translating biblical verses from an emotional point of view, and they're missing the vast majority of meaning. He goes, you can't get caught up doing that. You can't get you can't get caught up in an emotional mindset when you're talking about the Jewish word for heart, lev, because you'll be missing out on all the rational thought, awareness, intent, reflection, and the grand finale, the place where you perceive God. That's the trap. That's why he's been pushing us away from these emotional interpretations of heart and lev. Okay. It is not a coincidence, he says. How do I do this? Let's just see something. It is not a coincidence that the Bible spells out this love in judicious terms. Love again, meaning loving God. And he's quoting, you shall love the Lord your God and keep his charge and his statutes and his ordinances and his commandments always. Indeed, the idea of loving God references the same term as the joining of man and wife into a single organic unit. To love the Lord your God, to follow his ways, and to join him. That's davka. It's the word to cleave. Daled beit kuf hey. That's what he's referring to. Love, therefore, is not a fleeting emotion, but an actualized connection between man and God. This mind to mind joining is a mind boggling idea. Okay, that's what he's saying. If you keep using emotional terms with regards to your understanding of heart or lev, you miss that what we're really talking about is connection here. Connection, there's things connecting here. So when you want to perceive God, it's not just a mental function. Oops. Sorry about that. This microphone's on this wire. It's not just a mental function, it's a connection. To perceive God is to connect, and you do that from your lave. There is no such thing as translating a figurative concept or figure of speech in a literal way. Just imagine translating I feel blue into a language where the color has no associations of melancholy. Thus, there is zero literal merit to translating Lev's heart anywhere, anytime. Indeed, figuratively, many Lev verses would best be translated as head. Drinking makes you lightheaded, obtuseness is being thick-headed. Okay, so he's making a point. If you're going to try to use an anatomical reference, might as well use head, but he's just saying this to prove a point. Okay. Okay. Because there is no alternative seat of rationality anywhere in the Bible, no thinking head nor brain, translating Levis' heart strips its characters of their innate rationality. The main character so misread is the so-called God of the Old Testament, deemed innately temperamental, being capable of anger, joy, and other emotions. Okay, so here's his point. He goes, it's like a slippery slope. If we insist on taking an emotional mindset and understanding the word lev and saying it's always referring to emotions, then when that word is used in reference to God, God being angry, I mean, there's a God, jealous God is part of the commandments. Then you're going to start thinking God has emotions, and he doesn't. That's contrary to what we believe. Because there's the biggest trap. The biggest trap is you'll get a misunderstanding of God if you try to take this emotional point of view. That's why he's pounding this point home. And he's right in doing it. Okay. Inevitably, many mistranslations are forced in few verses to translate Levi's mind. Okay. So there's some exceptions, but the exceptions prove the rule. Okay. I admit that translating all of the Lev verses using the term mind, as we must, will lead to some odd formulations. We are socialized to expect emotions to be heartfelt rather than mindfelt. Right. So here he's giving an insight into psychology and saying some of this won't sit right because we're not used to using the words that way, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. And he's quoting, remove anger from your mind. Okay, we're used to thinking, remove anger from your heart, but no, remove anger from your mind. I will harden the mind of Pharaoh, the fear of your mind, which you shall fear. Okay, stop for a second. Let's take Pharaoh for a second. He was stubborn. He had a hard heart. He was stubborn. Okay. That's not necessarily an emotional thing. When we say somebody's stubborn, it's like thick-headed, hard-headed, won't budge. We do give a mental / cognitive attribute to that. And here it fits with Paro. But this stylistic praise is negligible. Okay, meaning the awkwardness that we're not quite used to. Okay, it's a small price to pay. It still makes sense. While the danger of imposing the emotional heart on the text is enormous, there is no parallel risk in translating Lev as the mind. Okay. Let us remember that such emotional lev verses are scarce. In 90% of the verses, mind simply makes more sense. So he went through Tanakh. And at some point, when Tanakh references Medrash, he went to that. And he's saying, I'm sure he's ballparking, I don't know if he did an actual account, 90% of the time, lev means mind, and only 10% of the time it could be referenced to mean loosely an emotion. Okay, and here's what he's talking about. These words, and you can see on the screen, you can see what the sources are. These words, which I am commanding you today, shall be constantly on your mind. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you're at home or away, when you lie down or get up. We're pretty familiar with that. The children are brazen-faced and tough-minded. My mind is spinning. My strength left me. And the mind of the king of Aram was in turmoil over this thing. Say to the frantic-minded, be strong, fear not. The Lord will smite you with madness and with blindness and with mind bafflement. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his servants changed their minds towards the people, and they said, what is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? Rehoboam was young and weak-minded, and could not be strong before them. What man is there that is fearful and weak-minded? Let him go and return to his house, lest his brethren's mind melt as his mind. There shall be no rest for the sole of your foot, but the Lord shall give you there a troubled mind, forlorn eyes, and so on. My mind was searing in me when I think a fire burns. Lest the avenger of blood pursue the manslayer while his mind is searing and overtake him. Make me of a single mind to fear your name. I have walked before you truly and with an unqualified mind, and have done what is good in your eyes. Man sees to the eyes, but the Lord sees to the mind. Harlotry, liquor, and wine swipe the mind. For you, O Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, have made a revelation to your servant, saying, I will build you a house. Therefore, your servant was put in mind of praying this prayer unto you. David's mind assailed him because he had cut off Saul's skirt. It was on the mind of David, my father, to build a house for the name of the Lord. You alone know the minds of all the sons of men. He sent me to mend those whose minds cripple, to proclaim liberty to the captives. You won't break me, having nothing to do with a broken heart. So, what happened there? I don't know what the translation is. And the Lord gripped the mind of Pharaoh. Even the mind of the rash will discern knowledge. And even the tongue of the stammerers will hasten to speak clearly. I stated a reply as was on my mind. Out of the innocence of your mind you have done this. Know in your mind that the Lord your God was disciplining you just as a man disciplines his son. I am asleep, but my mind is awake. And he who trusts his own mind is a fool, but he who follows wisdom will escape. One of a zillion, I think he says 800 times the word lev is used in Tanakh. And these are examples of how it can easily be understood clearly and accurately to be mind. So you can see that from the Jewish point of view, the word lev means mind, and the mind is the place where the action takes place. Like your internal world takes place in your mind. So when we meditate at the end of class and we say, let's sit relaxed, structured, where are you going? Where are you, the meditator, going? You're going in your mind. That's the seat of your internal world. So, and all this stuff takes place. You experience bafflement, you experience frantic, you experience fear, you get weak, you get strong. You have a single mind. You have a mind to mind connection with other people. All this stuff takes place in your mind. So it's like a little house inside. It was on my mind. All these references, all these things are indications of you managing your internal world, all the goings on in your mind, some of which are emotions, a lot of which are cognitive functions, for better or worse. Some of us manage it well and some of us don't manage it well, and there's everybody in between. That's what we're talking about here. So the Bible is full of examples about how people succeed or fail in managing the contents of their mind and managing themselves in their mind. And then due to the success or failure or somewhere in between, different things happen. Pharaoh managed the stuff going on in his mind poorly to make him stubborn, and look what happened to him. Just as one of the many examples. Okay. So just these verses here, are showing examples about how, to the extent to which you manage the contents of your mind, determines the extent to which you'll succeed or fail externally in the world. As what happens inside, so will happen outside. And that's why all these modern day guys like Maxwell, Maltz, and Fury, and Steven Siebold, and everybody else are talking about success mechanisms, this kind of stuff. That's where we had it first. And now you know why Rabbi Kaplan is saying how important meditation is, because meditation is managing, controlling your thoughts, managing what's going on in your mind. This used to be something we did, and it was part of our religious practice. And that's why we're reclaiming it. So there we go. That's what we're doing. Okay, let's go to Bhante. Whoops, hold on. Okay. So with Bhante, we've been getting off the cushion. Bhante has been saying, you can't just sit there with your legs crossed and going the whole time. You've got to be able to be mindful in everyday living. And he's given us transitional exercises to do that. Meaning, he's given us ways that we can practice being mindful when we're in everyday life. Because what exactly are you doing with seated meditation? We are practicing being mindful. So let's get off the cushion and do that. And he talked about being aware of postures. He talked about the walking meditation, heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe. Being aware of your body's position. Talked about doing slow motion activity, so that even something like putting on a shoe, you break it down, you do it very slowly, and you become ultra aware of every step in the process, putting on the shoe, making sure it's comfortable, grabbing this lace, grabbing that lace, making the bow. That's building mindfulness. And doing it with anything, making dinner, whatever. Okay. Now he's talking about breath coordination. We're going to follow with what he calls stolen moments. Let's take a look. Breath coordination. He starts in seated meditation. Our primary focus, excuse me, is the breath. We sit there and we focus on the breath moving in and out of our nostrils. Total concentration on the ever-changing breath brings us squarely into the present moment. And by the way, if you are panicking for whatever reason, focus on the breath moving in and out of your nostrils. It's right there. Just you don't have to do anything more elaborate than that. It'll ground you. The same principle can be used, excuse me, in the midst of movement. You can coordinate the activity in which you are involved with your breathing. This lends a flowing rhythm to your movement, and it smooths out many of the abrupt transitions. Activity becomes easier to focus on, and mindfulness is increased. Your awareness thus stays more easily in the present. Ideally, meditation should be a 24-hour-a-day practice. This is a highly practical suggestion. Yeah. Okay, but notice he's not saying match your breathing to your, let's say, walking. He's saying match your walking to your breathing. That's really important. You can't just like, well, I'm going to walk fast and I'm going to breathe fast. No. If you're excited, you breathe normally and slow down your body to match your breathing. That's what he's talking about. A state of mindfulness is, excuse me, a state of mental readiness. The mind is not burdened with preoccupations or bound in worries. Whatever comes up can be dealt with instantly. When you are truly mindful, your nervous system has a freshness and resiliency that fosters insight. A problem arises, and you simply deal with it quickly, efficiently, and with a minimum of fuss. You don't stand there in a dither, and you don't run off to a quiet corner so you can sit down and meditate about it. You simply deal with it. And in those rare circumstances when no solution seems possible, you don't worry about that. You just go to the next thing that needs your attention. Your intuition becomes a very practical facility. Now, there's a qualifier here which he didn't mention, which is training. And this is the tie-in to what Rabbi Kaplan's going to teach us about molding yourself. Let me give you a martial arts analogy here. Yeah, we want to be the center of the storm. We want to be able to remain mindful in very fast moving activity, some of which can be violent. If you're centered, then you're not thinking, you're just reacting. But you have to be trained to react. If somebody's in a position where they have to defend themselves, they can be as mindful as anybody here and be cool, calm, and collected. But if they have no training is going to kick in and they're going to get clunked. Okay, so when he says, whatever comes up can be dealt with instantly, yeah, if you train yourself. Okay, so that's why we're going to spend a bunch of weeks on this whole idea of remolding yourself, becoming the person that you need to be, the mitzvah man, whatever you want to, whatever your pursuit is, so that when you have to act, your training kicks in. That's the key here. Okay. But you want to be able to, if you train properly, if you educate yourself properly, if you do the mitzvah properly, then that is what will come out when you remain centered and just calm yourself and focus on your breath. If you don't train properly, if you don't train to do the mitzvah properly, or whatever you're talking about, self-defense, whatever it is that you do, if you don't train properly, and when you're centered, you'll mess up. Okay, that's the missing key here. He doesn't talk about that. I mean, he will talk about having personal virtues, but his assumption is that you're practicing those every day. So, okay, I'm stressing that, especially since it's going to be the next component of our curriculum. Okay, very, 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 very key. We'll finish with this other little final piece he has, which he calls stolen moments. Very important stuff. We are right here. The concept of wasted time does not exist for a serious meditator. Little dead spaces during your day can be turned to profit. Every spare moment can be used for meditation. You're sitting in traffic, sitting anxiously in the dentist's office, meditate on your anxiety. Feeling irritated while standing in the line at the bank, meditate on irritation. All right, what he's not saying is you're standing in line at the bank, why aren't they serving me? Where's the teller? Blah, blah, blah. No. Oh, I'm irritated right now. Okay. That's the mindfulness. You just become aware of you and what you're doing. It's an opportunity to just rise up a little bit, go in and say, that's me right now. That irritated guy that's getting mad and impatient. Okay. Bored, twiddling your thumbs at the bus stop, meditate on boredom. Try to stay alert and aware throughout the day. Be mindful of exactly what is taking place right now, even if it is tedious drudgery. Take advantage of moments when you are alone. Take advantage of activities that are largely mechanical. Use every spare second to be mindful. Use all the moments you can. So again, he's not saying suppress and repress and oppress and all this stuff. It's like, you just take an opportunity to be aware of what you are. Just like you're using awareness of the external about how you're putting on your shoe. You're using that same awareness of internal, like, what's my mental state right now? What's my emotional state right now? Oh, I'm getting impatient. I wonder why I'm getting impatient. All right, well, that's me thinking about why I'm getting impatient. That's what he's talking about. Okay. So now he's saying that you can successfully get off the cushion and develop mindfulness all the time in everything you do. It doesn't mean you become like this, serenity now guy. It means that you are who you are, but you're more aware of what you are and you're more aware of who you are. That's the key. And then when you embark on a program of fixing yourself, improving yourself, you know what your starting point is because you're aware, oh yeah, I am that guy that gets bugged all the time. That's his point. That's the key. That's the function of mindfulness. Think, Bhante. Okay, we will stop the share and we will meditate. Margaret, if you please.